Hong Kong, a city of opportunity. Invest, where the world's most prominent international brands are flourishing, in a place that nurtures businesses so they grow, building connections between East and West. Set up shop in a place where an entrepreneurial spirit abounds. Launch and expand your business where smart also means safe, where you can easily find the talent with the right backgrounds and skills. Invest Hong Kong is here for you to get you started and help you grow, where business goes to grow.
Good morning and welcome to the final day of BODW 2022 Summit. I am Miss Shili, your program host, and we're broadcasting live from M+ Museum right here in Hong Kong. Our forum will kick off with a keynote session, a lifetime of creative experimentation, reflecting on the life and work of Mr. Chi Wing Lo, a Hong Kong-born, Italy-based design legend whose creations transcend the boundaries of art, architecture, and furniture design. Our moderator will be Ms. Betty Ng, founder of Collective. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Betty Ng.
Hello, Chi Wing.
Hi.
It's particularly special for me to be able to sit here with you in person to have this conversation today. Having graduated from the same university, also brought up from Hong Kong, and having worked in Europe. I just want to give a little background of why I'm so fascinated with your work. Back in 2009, your name caught my eye when you and your partner's work, Tower House in Athens, got nominated the Mies van der Rohe Award. For me, as a Chinese architect, it was a very big deal to see your name up there. And then a few months ago, I came across your sculptural work in Gui Feng Hin at Daigun. I thought it was very mesmerizing with all these mythical kind of like almost animals floating in space. But what really caught all architects' eyes in Hong Kong at that moment with these sculptures was how meticulous they were being put together. They almost looked like very, very intricate architectural models individually with materials overlapping, coming together with extremely well-executed details. So I'm going to ask you a rhetorical question, which everyone asks you all the time. What's your relationship between architecture and art?
I think they are the same. One informs the other. In my case, I think my art is kind of at the back, inform my architecture, my interior, furniture, objects. They embody a kind of philosophical and aesthetic bias, you say, a kind of preoccupation that you believe the kind of world inside you and you want to project forward must have certain quality, certain principle, certain integrity that must be coming from those work. So they, of course, when you talk about they're very precise, for me, the precision in those sculptures is actually generate a kind of enigma. What I meant is, when you see something so precise and you don't know what exactly they are for, you start to question all kinds of things you have associated in your life, things that you have seen through your travel, books you have read. So those work as an art form, they question your logic, your knowledge, your association. Actually, there's also the precision of the three domains of time that's being present in those work that you see simultaneously, past, present, and future. So precision is not just a technical precision, but it's a precision of how to combine those elements that I came across my life through my travel, through my reading experience coming together. It's my own encyclopedia that coming together like that. So it's the art form in this sculpture is actually my reference whenever I'm doing other works.
I can totally see that those work looks very personal. It feels very personal in a way. But of course, as an architect, I'm also very interested in the craft. So may I pry a little bit? Were those sculptures made in Italy?
Yes, they are. The idea was 30 years ago in Stuttgart when I was given a very dreamy scholarship that allowed me just doing nothing or whatever I want. So every morning I remember that I confront a white piece of paper and consider that as a beginning. And of course, once you have the chance of having a beginning, you ask what you like, what you don't like. It's like a creation of idea in that white piece of paper. So it's like a ritual. After 30 days, I have drawn 30 objects. And that time, the Academy giving me an opportunity to exhibit them. And during the exhibition, many asked, why don't you make them as a sculpture? And I said, well, I did not really have the knowledge about wood, metal at that point. I have not even made a furniture then. So only about 18 years later, I start looking at them a little bit more seriously after knowing a little bit more about craftsmanship. Of course, I failed. I failed continuously quite a few years because if you overcome them, to make one is okay, but you have to understand that I have to make many out of those in order to have a kind of a language, an impact as a whole body of work. So I failed quite a few years, and then when the first one sort of made and have achieved that kind of quality I expect, no, I cry. I cry a lot because I don't believe that it can be made. And even now, people question if ever going to be made by human hand. Definitely, they're not made by computer. So also that adds another level of enigma where this object coming from. Yes.
Well, I think one of the most fascinating elements of your career indeed is the real multidisciplinary medium that you use. You work in architecture, interior design, furniture design. You're also a sculptor. And I think the audience should also know that you really built your career in Europe. You have been working in Italy for such a long time, and you were the artistic director for Giugiatti. In our earlier conversation, I was asking you about this beautiful furniture design for Giugiatti, Nin, which is a very complicated kind of mechanical kind of cabinet. And you mentioned to me it took 2 years to figure out a mechanic. How do you open a certain drawers in a certain way? Can you speak a little bit about the element of time and craft, particularly between what you have experienced in Italy versus in Hong Kong or Asia?
No, I grew up here until I left 40 years ago. I went to America to study, then I moved to Europe. So in these 3 continents, I would say in Hong Kong, it gave me a kind of early childhood about things that maybe still I'm carrying in my DNA. Then in America, there's an openness. I guess you experience the same. There's nothing wrong or nothing absolutely right. You just have to develop it and be convincing about what you're doing. In Europe, for me, the biggest inspiration is that how to realize those ideas solidly with certain kind of, faith of what you believe in. I remember, first time going to loft part of Milan where all these objects are being made and produced by different designers. And within 20 minutes of drive, you practically find everything you want. Not like in South China, you have to take a plane and drive a few more hours, to reach a place that you find something perhaps not exactly what you want. So there was a kind of a whole, I would say, like a laboratory very close to each other of many different trades, technique, material that you get acquainted with and develop from there. So with that, I grew, I would say, quite healthily in that context to really have that optimism. Whatever you thought of, it can be realized. I mean, that is something very encouraging as a designer, as an architect.
Yes, quite a luxury also.
Because different part of the world struggle very, very different things. But I think that part of it, of course, I must say absolute that sort of happened. But the idea that it cannot be realized, sooner or later it will be realized. It's like the sculpture that I was talking about. Okay, didn't realize 18 years, but it realized 18 years later. So there's many ideas that has to be put in the fridge and wait for the time when the technology really helping you to develop that. I think these 3 continents have shaped me that way.
That's really interesting because I think nowadays, as designers and architects, I would love to think that we enjoy this fluidity and mobility in design. We are able to work in any countries. But I would like to pry a little bit more on your design process, if it's okay. For example, I run a small team, and we will have a program, and we'll have a design brief, and then we will let the team design, and then we will do reviews. So I myself, as a design director, is more or less an editor, if you like. I rely on the brilliance of the team. However, I understood that Chi-Wing, you work quite lean in a way, that your role has always been a design director or an artistic director, and you work with different teams of people. Correct me if I'm wrong. I would love to understand a little bit more your design process. How do you design?
If I would tell you, particularly in the context of Hong Kong, nobody will believe that. My office has 3 people, Chi-Wing Lo. Meaning that I'm doing everything, particularly on the aspect of design, from the beginning to the end. So whenever I have a collaboration with different establishment clients, my request is very simple. I will do this part. You have somebody to help me to oversee certain things, and I'll be always aside to, to get it realized that way. So I'm very kind of hand-on everything. Doing a project, big or small, I'm always there. I don't believe design is a very clean job. You got to be there all the time, because I always say design and making are one. Because during the process of realization, you realize that certain problem you have never been able to encounter in drawing, you start confronting them, and you have to offer a possibility to them. And I think that idea, that design will become further enriched through the process of realization. I have never done a drawing to say, okay, realize it exactly like that level. It's always through a transformation of that process of realization, and actually become better and better. Many say, oh, you compromise, but not. Design for me is how do you erase that compromise, and that compromise actually become part of that design. And it's sort of so natural to it. So that, I think, I'm searching for that, perfection of the imperfection at the same time. Yeah.
That's a really good way to put it. We always look for the perfection in an item, in a design, but then we always have to, it's like tango. You need to go back and forth.
Oh, yes, right? A lot of improvisation, yes.
Oh, yeah, that's a good word to use, too. Well, that also brings me back to a very interesting project that you're working on in Hong Kong. So excited to be sitting in person with you right here in Hong Kong, but there's a reason why you're here, right?
Yes.
So we understood that you are currently redesigning the formerly Regent/Intercontinental Hotel in Tsim Sha Tsui. Can you tell us a little bit more about this project?
I have never done a hotel. And why that opportunity was offered to me, sometime even today, I continue to puzzle. Perhaps one of the reasons is maybe because I have never done a hotel.
I think so.
It's like the time when I designed the first furniture, my professor at Harvard asked me, Chi-Wing, could you think furniture? I said, I have never done a furniture. Yes, exactly. We want somebody who have never done a furniture. I think when you think of hotel today, hospitality, business experience of traveler, going to, certain place for accommodation, there's certain standard. 5 star, 4 star, 1 star, low star, whatever you call it, resort, retreat. They seem to have established a kind of standard by the book. And, you enter to a 5-star hotel, you expect certain things. And perhaps the client looking for something more than that. Because otherwise they would just hire an architect very established. They deliver a perfect 5-star hotel. So I was called for this project. Perhaps one of the reasons that I have never done a hotel it's good to think that way in Hong Kong, have that kind of openness to entrust creativity as very much a part of that process rather than just deliver a project. So I feel very privileged to be in that position and have that kind of freedom as much as I can to look at hotel a little bit different.
I totally feel you. As an architect also, I think a good project, of course, comes from our team, our collaborators, but also a good client. Your experience makes me feel like you are basically the ultimate collaborator, you know, because you work alone, right? And you basically keep collaborating with different parties. What really interests me, and I believe the audience would like to know more and pry more, is the collaboration with teams in Europe, particularly in Italy, versus the collaboration with teams in Hong Kong in particular. What are the differences, mainly? Yeah.
In Italy, I always with craftsmen. Whenever I have an idea, I will go to talk to them. We test out, view little, detail if those were working like that. In Italy, I think they like challenge. They want something that not just everything they make every day the same. You give them something, of course, they will say, "Oh, achieving this is not possible." No. And then you sort of push a little bit. What about a little bit like that, like that? They take the challenge. They come back to you tomorrow morning. Wait, Jimmy, what about that? So we have that kind of back and forth sort of feedback to the idea to make it possible. Working in Hong Kong a little bit different. Here, unfortunately, I think most of our industry has moved away, and we rely on a kind of a remote resources to make things to work. So there's a level of communication in between. And even there, I try to overcome that. I went to China, go to the factory, stay in the factory, tell them how to spray varnish, how to make joints. I think those part of it is, I would say, particularly in these projects, I have to ask them to establish certain quality, certain standard within a very short time. And of course, this challenge for them is how to push something almost impossible to make it possible. Yet it took a lot of effort.
Will you still work in Hong Kong?
Why?
Well, it is not an easy process, indeed.
You learn very different things. Before this project in Hong Kong, I actually had a lot of event and exhibition project, lecture in China. So I also quite used to that part of the world when talking about the kind of resources they have.
So earlier we had a conversation, and I believe there is a video that they would like to play for the audience to take a look. So then we'll continue our conversation. Yeah.
All right. I work a lot with circle. I work a lot with square. Why? It's because those fine dimensional geometry make things very recognizable. Second is, it demands incredible precision. A circle is a circle. It's a radius all around, equal distance. A square has 4 90 degrees, have 4 equal sides. And everything that sort of work towards that is approach to that perfection. And that perfection is always, you find yourself always deviate. So I think all my work has that, invisible guideline behind it, that the perfection is following that sort of, the invisible guideline. I think sustainability is a lot to do with things that you make, you design, should last, that we are not changing a software every month. Now, of course,
if you buy furniture, it lasts 1 century. What is the economy of furniture? Then it's also you want to find a balance on those. So I'm more occupied in those things that when I design something, I want to see it last. For example, how we use solid wood. I mean, we don't want to make a chair out of one tree. So we work a lot of ways to deal with solid wood. How to reduce the waste, for example, so that those very limited resources can be shared by many. The best design is when compromise is become positive. Compromise is erased. Compromise has become part of the idea. That, for me, is a good design. I think modern luxury has certain personal dimension, meaning that given the great, I would say, infinite difference between individuals, I'm not intended to give you one particular thing. I will give you a background. I will give you a background that you feel that you belong to, that you don't feel like, oh, this is not my way of this. But that kind of, I would say, a blank piece of paper that you can color on. Let's put it this way. I always believe that we have enough visual pollution. Does more design contribute to more this visual pollution? It's like we have billions of chairs. Why we want to design another chair? What is the purpose of it? What is your contribution? So if you're talking about design change, I think the first thing is maybe not to design, but really look at, if we have 1 million chair already, what is that 1 million, one chair contribute, to this whole process, this whole, humanity, in the long run. I wish people look at my work, but not me, because I believe every work from a designer is already project his thought, his character. It's like I can tell from a work whether you are modest or pompous. So I would say, if they can find that calmness and modesty in my work, that's pretty much me as well. The younger generation designer worry that they do not have the opportunity. Look at me, I'm 68 years old now. I always believe time will come when it's your turn, but be sure that you're ready when the time comes to your turn.
Thank you so much, Chi Wing. I feel like I'm waiting for my turn right now. Well, it's very interesting to watch the video after a little chat, because
it's good.
everything seems so perfect in the video. But then during our conversation just now, something really hit me very, very deep inside, is when you mentioned the American education you have received. And I have said exactly the same thing, that I've learned we can make mistakes. You're actually encouraged to experiment and make mistakes and keep going, keep failing, and keep improving. And then you sort of end the note of creating profession through imperfection. I would love to hear a little bit more about this idea you have of experimentation. First of all, do you have something that you have not yet experimented and really wanted to touch upon in your current age? You mentioned you're 68.
I don't know, one experiment is make an airplane out of stone. There's a misconception about weight of material. Do you know that the weight of aluminum and the weight of the stone are the same? These are about 2.5 tons per cubic meter.
Good one.
So I think experimentation a lot to do with that. You think of something that is usually made of certain thing, and you say, no, what about we make of some other material. That's always a challenge. And that's always a way to open up new possibility. 2 days ago, I was in this incubator program to interact with the younger designers. And they were making a chair out of cardboard. And I said, why don't you make it out of Chinese rice paper? They said, no, it's too thin. Oh, that is an inspiration. How do you use that paper, however thin, they can make a chair out of it. So I think change of material is one way. Then the other thing is look at use, I think also very important. I mean, for our history, mankind, eat, wash, work, sleep, pretty much unchanged.
True.
And how do you look at that, those kind of basic habit of life, and how do we interpret it and make that interesting, or make that something that gives happiness to it. So those are also a very important point. Design eventually is having something between you and me, whether it's architecture, interior, and object. So how that sort of make your life easier, or make your life more beautiful, more poetic. So that's for me is that media between you and me. For design, I try to project and hope you share.
I guess everyone's dying to ask you this question since you're back in Hong Kong. What is next for you, Chi Wing?
I think Hong Kong given me a lot. Even though I left many years ago and returned recently. And when I return, I meet an incredible group of people who share ideas and having the same mind. So from that, I feel it's time for me maybe to give something of what I learned back, to have more chance to interact with your generation. Try to understand what you're confronting, what is your difficulty and struggle, and perhaps that through a conversation, a dialogue, we can find a little exit, a little path that's closer to you. I think I like to take that role a bit more, although being at my age doesn't entitle me to advice. Do not get misinterpreted. But I think it's time to also to share with other people.
Thank you so much. I'm getting your number after this.
I will give you.
Well, your incredible body of work and the precision and profession that I've showcased also through the video, but at the same time, your kind of generosity in also letting us know making mistakes is actually part of making things better is very inspiring. Thank you so much for this conversation, Chi Wing.
Thank you.
And I'm sure we'll continue.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Mr. Lo for sharing his insights and thoughts, and of course being a great inspiration to designers from around the world. And of course, big thanks to Ms. Betty Ng for leading the discussion.